Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We've got Dave Meltzer on the line. It's a big show today. We're going to be joined in about a half hour by Chris Jericho talking his new book, A Lion's Tale. You can call in throughout the show, 1-800-878-PLAY. You can send emails to bryan@WrestlingObserver.com. Anything related to pro wrestling or mixed martial arts, give us a call or an email, and we'll discuss it on the show. Dave, what's going on?
We're just in the middle of a Ring of Honor show, and I guess today was a lot better of a day here than the first 2 days, which were the ultimate in fiascos. I mean, this was a disaster of legendary proportions. And I mean, wrestling conventions, a lot of them have been disasters. Probably more have than haven't, but apparently this one took the cake.
You are in San Francisco at the Cow Palace.
I am at the world-famous Cow Palace in a back room right now, yes.
Wow.
And I've been in this building many, many times. It brings me back to my childhood, and they were kind of sad. There's only, a couple of hundred people here, and but the crowd, the people who are here do remind me of the old Cow Palace crowd. They're very into it, and they know Ring of Honor, and they're big time fans. And I think there's only about 350 of them, but the show, and they're doing kind of an old time show. From what I've seen, it's really, it's like a lot of an old time wrestling show on the undercard.
How many people are there tonight?
I'd say 350.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So really, it's a good thing you didn't show up yesterday or the day before, because those are the really sad days.
Oh my God! I suppose Friday night. Well, the other thing is it was a lot more organized today. So it wasn't as much of a disaster. But that whole MMA fiasco, what a crazy weekend this ended up being. I mean, I knew it would be a bloodbath, but I didn't think that it would be. I didn't know whose blood it was going to be.
You really didn't expect it to be this big a disaster, because I almost did, really.
Oh no! I expect it to be a disaster as far as financially, absolutely. I mean, as far as insanity, you can't predict something to be as insane as this weekend ended up being, between the fights and the cancellations and the promoter being out of his mind and, just everything that happened. I don't know that you can predict that much craziness.
Did you get any sort of update today on Don Fry?
He was walking around yesterday, and I guess he was okay, but I mean, he got nailed with punches on two different occasions. He got sucker punched twice by some guy named Sonny, the bodyguard of Leland Chapman. So it was, I don't think that he's going to be too happy today,
I guess we should bring everybody up to speed on Don Fry. What was the story that you heard?
Don Fry, there was a meeting with, I guess a lot of the wrestlers were attempting to get paid by the martial arts promoter because the guy who promoted the wrestling side told them that guy would pay. And some of the martial arts guys were fighting over their pay because their show was canceled, and they all thought that since they trained for a fight that they should have at least gotten some money. So there was a big argument, and Don Fry was kind of like the leader of the martial arts people because, he's kind of the veteran and everything like that, and he was talking for everyone to the promoter, and the promoter was saying, like, if you come in, like, one at a time, we'll try to take care of you, and Leland Chapman, who's the son of Dog the Bounty Hunter, just started, throwing a fit and making a big scene. So Don Fry just goes, let's come outside and talk about it. And so they went outside, and when they went outside, Leland Chapman's bodyguard, a Hawaiian guy named Sonny, sucker punched Don Fry and knocked him down and bloodied him up. And Don Fry got up, tackled him, and was pounding on him from the mount when he was pulled off. And that was fight number one. And then later that night, I guess by the entrance of the Sheraton Hotel, they were walking, and Don Fry saw the guy, and he went up to talk to the guy, and the guy punched Don Fry again and knocked him right down, and I guess there's a big dent in the kind of like in the entrance of the hotel, so he knocked him flying. And Don Fry got up, and the guy and Chapman started running, and so that was it. So Don Fry he's probably not feeling too well, and he'd been drinking a lot anyway, but he came back to the bar with his eye all black later that night and was still drinking, so that's
we have a report here that this Sonny fellow was apparently Leyland's boxing coach.
Okay. I didn't know that.
That would explain the punch.
Yeah, well, you sucker punch a guy, jeez. So, but it's ludicrous, and I mean, the police have been, the police were called, and they came, and I don't know what everything that's going to go down with this thing. I can't believe they booked guys to fly out of Sacramento. I mean, that's like an hour and a half away. Oh, it's just crazy.
Well, I want to talk about UFC, but first off, I want to go to Alex in San Diego, who I believe was at the Fan Fest and can tell us more about it. Alex, are you there? Alex.
Brian?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's going on? Hey, I'm actually at the Ring of Honor show right now in another hallway. Yeah, last night I come up at the elevator at the Sheraton. There's Don Fry there knocked out. I didn't see the punch. And then I came here as a vendor. And then the promoter, there's two of them, Rob and Jay. Those are the guys that really kind of stepped up because Chris was the main promoter of the whole shindig. And apparently there was rumors going around that he got jumped in a limo. But from what I heard from Rob is that he just bailed town and the cops were at his house and stuff like that. And apparently a lot of the headliners got paid half up front and then with a check. And then a lot of guys the first night were real optimistic about the checks clearing. But I guess that some of the guys started trying to cash them. They were bouncing. And then Chris was telling the guys, hey, just wait till Monday. Like he had told Piper, wait till Monday. And he split town. And so I was there actually at the meeting last night at the bar when Rob stood up and told everybody what was going on and asking people if they could get people rides. Like Snooker needed a ride to the airport and someone needed to go pick up Crime Time. I'm here while Rome is burning. It's insane.
I heard that Crime Time was on the way there today, and their car broke down, and so they had to get a ride to the building or a jump or something like that. And I also heard that something like 30% of people had gotten checks. Most of those checks were bouncing, and a lot of the other guys just didn't get paid at all.
Well, I know a promoter in San Diego, and then he knows a wrestler. And then the wrestler, actually, he was here last night. He worked the independent show that they had. The independent show, my trainer, he just came up here as a fan, as another vendor, and then they needed some bodies for the 32-man Battle Royal and got into Battle Royal and they got into the AWA show. It was just, it was crazy. They were just looking for people. Whoever had gear, they'd put in the Battle Royal.
What do you think about the ROH show so far?
The ROH show, the crowd is into it. A lot of these guys are yelling out references from like 5 years ago. I mean, it's like the California fans have been waiting for this for a while. I was talking to some guys earlier. If they'd had a one-night with Austin and the ROH show, I really think this would have been a lot bigger success. Yeah, this is what everyone came out for. The Ring of Honor booth was huge, and it did real well. And, I mean, yeah, the Sunday night definitely has been the best night. It has the most people, and then people are happy. And I don't think people came to the other two nights because they didn't quite know about all the craziness that happened the other two nights.
Since both of you were there, how was the Steve Austin deal? I heard he showed up and ended up going in after being talked to about it and went in there anyway, and I guess I would assume quite a crowd.
Oh, it was. I didn't get to go talk to Austin because the crowd was, I mean, the line was just really, really long. And for what I mean, yeah, the crowd was just, there was a huge crowd for Austin. I didn't see it, but yeah, that's all I'm saying about that.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you very much for the call, and have a good time at the ROH show. Say hi to Dave.
Oh, yeah.
In corridor right now.
I'm talking to Keith. Lipinski's up here in the front row as well.
Cool.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
So, Dave, your thoughts on UFC last night?
It was a decent show. It came. I think a lot of people weren't very excited about it, and then coming out, it was just kind of there. Brandon Vera, again, that was not the result that UFC would have wanted. I think in any of the key matches, really. I think that in that sense, I think they wanted Rich Franklin to win. I think that they deep down probably didn't expect him to win, and he looked pretty outclassed actually by Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva looked like a real killer. It looks like it's going to be very difficult to win the championship from him, but we've seen with UFC anything can happen. Tim Sylvia just used his size to dominate Brandon Vera, and Brandon Vera, he looked like a guy out there who needs to be in the 205-pound weight class, and at the end, it was like he had been taught a lesson and everyone knew it except for him. He asked the people, should I stay at heavyweight? And, those people might not have been the right people to ask because they kind of said that he should. Of course, it was the way he asked the question, and I think it's pretty clear that he shouldn't. He needs to cut to 205. He was intimidated by the guy's size, standing, and Brandon Vera is a great stand-up fighter. And if I don't know that he would do much better with Arlovsky. Maybe if he tagged him, he would. But I don't know. I think that, UFC desperately didn't want Tim Sylvia to win, and the crowd certainly didn't want Tim Sylvia to win, but he won kind of he won kind of handily, even though it was a decision.
What did you think about the fact that on the show there was very little mention of Randy Couture?
I think that there is your answer as to why the HBO deal never went through, because UFC, it was really last night watching that show, they are 1980s WWF. When a guy left WWF, even if he was a superstar, his name was erased. I mean, later, by the late 90s and now, if a guy's a big star like, say, Kurt Angle or somebody like that, they'll make a mention of it, when he was leaving. Or with Austin, they made a big production, over, stupid big production over it. But, in this case, it was like a huge star. And, I mean, they were never going to mention it the whole show. The only reason it came up was because Tim Sylvia made a passing reference in his interview, and I think Bonner may have made a reference, in training at the gym or something, because he trained at Extreme Couture. But, they didn't want to bring it up at all, and that tells you, their mentality, which is if you don't work for us, you're not under contract to us, you don't exist.
Yeah, we talked to Mike Coughlin, who was at the press conference, and he said that when Dana got asked about it, the question he was asked was basically, why is Randy saying he's resigned and you've said he's retired? And this made Dana very, very upset. And he did the whole speech about how he's under contract. We still have him locked in. It's not like he can go fight anywhere and this and that. And Mike's impression was that Dana really wanted to launch into a huge tirade, but he knew he just couldn't do it.
I think he really doesn't want to, because he knows that whenever it's a fighter against a promoter in a situation like this, the people are always going to side with the fighter. And then when you're thrown in and it's Randy Couture, it makes it worse. So he knows it's a no-win situation. Yet at the same time, I think Dana, in his mind, believes that he was in the right and that Randy was getting bad advice on what happened. And, it's one of those things. I think that Dana would love to say how much Randy's getting paid, but then you open up that hornet's nest of all those things. They also want to keep everything quiet, so they're kind of it's weird, they got their hands tied. I know he wants to say, I think he wants to say everything. I know Randy wants to say everything, but his management people, I don't know what they're gonna try to talk him out of it. He's got a press conference on Thursday, by the way, to address everything. And I know Randy wants to say exactly what he made, and they're trying to say, if you say exactly what you made, you're going to lose a lot of sympathy, because all of a sudden people are going to go, hey, wait, you're not so underpaid. There's people around who actually think he only made $250,000 for the last two fights, which, of course, that's not what he made,
I believe we have a full bank of phone calls, but you can try anyway. And we were discussing the UFC show from last night, and Dave, the debut of Brock Lesnar, apparently in February. Who would you match him up against?
If they could get Brad Imons back under contract, I think she's someone of that level. A big guy with lower level of experience. That's kind of who I would match him up with, because you put him in there with a guy with a lot more experience, you're asking for trouble. Brock's a great athlete. He's a tremendous prospect for this sport, but this is not 1997 where an amateur wrestler can walk in and dominate everyone, because everyone's singular disciplined in wrestling can take down a kickboxer. This is, these guys have learned how to avoid takedowns. They're, the groundwork is far more sophisticated. He's had a year plus of training. Almost a year and a half now. But, he's still, people who want to see him go in there and fight Nogueira right off the bat, that's pretty unrealistic. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting thing who they match him up against and how they, it's like the curse of death, him being Brock Lesnar. The good side is that I'm sure he came in and he's getting a lot of money. I'm sure he's getting a great contract to come in, which another former NCAA champion, there's many that have gone into this, that are running around, Mark Munoz, Jake Rocholds, Johnny Hendricks, people like that, awesome amateur wrestlers, as good as Brock. They're not getting anything anywhere near that kind of money, but they're also being able to, progress at a level where, they can learn and go and get to the top slowly, whereas Brock, because of that money, they're going to want some return on their investment. The first match, they probably can get a lot of curiosity buys just by the fact he's having a first match, but, down the road they're going to want to match him with you know, your Arlovskis and your Tim Sylvias and people like that, and you know, you do that too soon, and you may ruin them. So yeah, it's a careful thing, but you know, they know what they're doing. It's just a question of how much patience they're going to have with it.
What do you expect to happen tomorrow when they have the big press conference with Fedor?
I mean, they're just going to announce, you know, that they're running an organization. I think they're going to say they're going to run it worldwide. I don't know who the money is, and I don't think that the real identity of the money people will be mentioned at the press conference. They might be. I don't know. But I think they're just going to announce that Fedor is their big star, and they're going to announce who's running it. I think they're going to have a parent company, but it's going to be a name that doesn't mean anything. I mean, the name of the parent company, it's going to be like Zuffa, except I don't think they're going to have the faces behind it there. Maybe they will. But, I mean, the thing with this is I think it's a lot, you know, unless they announce a television deal, what does it mean? I mean, it's like there is a real lack of, you know, across-the-board business sense in MMA today. I mean, it's incredible, and that's why people are losing so much money, because they'll go, and I mean, I look at it now, and people are going like, oh, if they sign, you know, Fedor against Randy, they're going to set the all-time record for buy rates. And it's like, if they don't have television and they don't have the UFC, if UFC did it, I don't know that they would set a record, but it would do very, very well if it was built up correctly. But if somebody else does it, I mean, there's no, you know, people totally underestimate or overestimate the value of these names because they live in that bubble. And I don't know that it could do, you know, I don't know if they can do 200,000 buys without UFC. I mean, that's asking a lot. You know,
with no TV or anything of that nature, I don't even know if you're going to break 100,000 buys.
You may be right. It's uncharted water. I think that very solidly you'll break 60,000. I'm pretty confident of that. 100,000 I think you can hit. 200,000 to me is the absolute max, and that sounds pretty ambitious. But you never know because, again, it's kind of uncharted water. You know, but, you know, and Randy Couture is, you know, he's very, very popular and he does have a big name. And, but, you know, I mean, people who are talking about, like, it, you know, doing, like, the kind of numbers of a big UFC event without television, I mean, you need TV. So if they don't announce a TV deal, and I don't know that they're going to, until, you know, this whole thing is dependent on TV. It's not dependent on stars. The stars are only stars if TV makes them stars to the general public.
You know, I don't know if there's anything to this, but one of the rumors that I heard was that they may be in bed with Elite XC, which would be some sort of a TV deal. It wouldn't be a cable or broadcast deal or anything like that, but that is some sort of TV.
Well, then what does that mean? And why doesn't Elite XC, you know, what Elite XC and them will work together? But that just means when you have two promoters working together, that just means it's temporary. It's like Elite XC working with Strikeforce. It's like, yeah, they're under contract and they're even going to do 2 more shows, but they hate each other. And when the contract is up, they're going to be gone. So if they're working with Elite XC, the bottom line is that, you know, you can't have two heads because they're going to end up, you know, at some point they're going to end up splitting up anyway. They're not going to work together because somebody's going to want to be the boss.
Is there ever a good reason for Elite XC purchasing all of these different promotions?
In theory, so they have local promotion in all these cities, but again, that is so, you know what I mean? It's like,
it seems like a gigantic waste of money.
I'm looking at it at the amount of money that they spent and what they're getting, and it's just like, no, it makes no sense. I mean, if those companies were making, well, and I guess the Hawaiian company's making money, but, you know, obviously if it was that successful, I mean, the promoters of the Hawaiian company, of Icon, wouldn't be looking to cash out. I mean, to me, it's like somebody else is going to pay for your headaches. And the Cage Rage, I mean, Cage Rage draws those big crowds, and they're losing money like crazy. So it's like, what are you buying? You know, it's like when UFC bought stuff. I mean, like when they bought WEC, okay, there was a method to the madness of buying WEC. When they bought WFA, it was a fire sale, you know, and they got some contracts cheap. When they bought Pride for however many millions they spent, I thought, what are you doing? What are you buying? I mean, granted, I think that they expected they were going to get a network TV, and they were buying network TV in Japan and everything. But the reality was that that was a terrible purchase. I mean, you know, they'll try to defend it, but that tape library wasn't worth what they spent, and you know, that was a bad.
I think the tape library could be worth what they spent, but they haven't taken any advantage of it whatsoever.
Yeah, it won't be. They spent way too much money on that, and you know, they spent it because they didn't want somebody else to get it, but all that would mean is somebody else, you know, I mean, I know people who were able to raise money that were talking to me about buying Pride, you know, at the same time, and then they wanted to bid for Pride with UFC. And I kept saying, why do you want to buy Pride? Just, you know, start your own company. Don't spend $60 million for what? You know, I mean, it's like, what are you getting? You're getting nothing but headaches. And, you know, UFC found it out well that they never even ran a show, and nobody else would have been able to. Someone else probably would have tried to run a show in Japan, would have failed miserably, and lost even more money.
Well, switching gears, we've got Chris Jericho on the line. His Lion's Tail, I presume, will be available very, very shortly. Some people have already had a chance to pick it up. You can get a list of his upcoming book signing dates at chrisjericho.com. Chris, how you doing?
Bryan Alvarez. I was just saying, Dave, that Bryan sounds like a Muppet, and he should be Frank Oz's replacement as the new voice of Yoda.
I've been hearing about this for about 5 days now, actually.
Frank Alvarez, or Bryan Alvarez, even better. What's going on, guys?
How are things going?
Good. Just doing a bunch of promotion, doing a bunch of interviews tonight, getting ready for the release of the book, which is on Thursday. So it's getting busy. I go to New York City tomorrow to do a bunch of media stuff, and then the tour starts on the 25th and goes till the 16th of November. So it's gonna be pretty cool, pretty busy. But book's already the #2 biography on Amazon.com. So far so good.
You've got a giant list of dates here, pretty much all over the United States and Canada. Any place that you're looking forward to in particular to go sign?
I mean, it's always cool to go to the New York area. It's a great wrestling area, and a great Jericho area, New Jersey and Long Island and New York City. It's interesting though. It's interesting how there's like 3 dates in LA. 4 dates in Seattle area. A lot of Army bases were really interested in having me come by, so that was cool. So I'm just happy to be there, man. Wherever I go, that people want to come and hang out is always cool with me. I'd like to add a couple more dates. I'd like to go to Chicago, great town for me. Detroit's always great, but I mean, it's not like I don't have enough dates as it is. I think there's like 20 dates so far. So far so good.
You don't have anything in San Francisco, do you?
No, nothing that northern. Like I said, there's 2 in LA or 3, and there's 4 in Seattle and that area, but nothing in Northern California as of yet that I know of.
Okay.
Maybe I can have one at your house, Dave. Just book me in the basement and I'll come over.
I just want to know if anybody contacted you about doing this Cow Palace thing this weekend.
Actually, they did. A long time ago, because I did a bunch of autograph signings over the summer. I did one for Scott D'Amore in like Windsor, and then I just got all these requests, and I thought that I would do some just to kind of go hang out with the fans and say hi. It'd been a while since I'd been on the road, and that guy contacted me. She's way back, like I think in June maybe or something, but I just didn't. Not to sound like a jerk or anything. I just didn't really have much interest in doing like the convention circuit. I did do one convention in Jersey, but I just didn't really want to go and do the circuit of like all the conventions with all the other guys and stuff. It just wasn't something that I didn't know if I'd dig that at this point in time, so I just decided not to do it. And it seemed like it was a little bit weird, fishy-wise maybe, and obviously it seems like that from what you guys have been talking about, that was definitely the case. So I don't know, like, did it get any crazier today?
Today actually was completely sane. So, but the first 2 days were, you know, I guess the most insane of any convention that there's ever been.
So really, maybe you should have gone.
I should have went. It just would have been even crazier.
You know, I mean, it probably would have been some great stories for your sequel. You know, of what happened in your life after WWE, and you can leave those 7 years or so of WWE for a third book.
Well, yeah, that's right. Exactly. Well, like I said, I heard some of the stories and stuff, but that's the thing with those conventions. Like, you just never know what you're getting into. I mean, and wrestling promoters are bad enough as it is, independent wrestling promoters, never mind guys that are just doing autograph signings and conventions and stuff. So I'd always be kind of wary of things like that, especially like, you know, when somebody says they're going to do the Cow Palace, automatically, you know, the red flag goes up. Like, how are you going to be able to afford the Cow Palace, and how many people are you going to get, you know, to get to come to the Cow Palace? You know, it reminds me of when, you know, I was working for the Winnipeg Free Press as their wrestling reporter, basically because no one else wanted to do it. And I went to the AWA in the Winnipeg Arena, the big return, and they drew like 350 people. And you've seen it before, both you guys have. In a huge arena like that, so few people just makes you feel like a real loser, even if you come. Like, if you're a fan that comes to one of those.
Thank you. I'm in the Cow Palace with 350 people as we speak.
It's like, you know, how uncool am I to come to this place when there's only 350 people. Never mind the guys that are actually there, you know, that are supposed to be the draws. Like, I remember sitting in that arena thinking, like, oh, my God, I'm a loser.
Hey, guys, Chris, I got to say it's an absolute honor to talk to the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla. And I want to talk to you about one of my favorite things you ever did in WCW was the thing with the pay-per-view where you wanted to fight Goldberg, and he went wandering through the halls, kind of like Spinal Tap. And I was wondering, did you book that, or who wrote that for you?
Oh, and I see how apropos it is that Alvarez cooks up the hellhole by Spinal Tap before your question comes on. And nice call on the Bonham, too. How obscure is that? Actually, funny. That was an idea that I had, direct ripoff of Spinal Tap, completely. Actually, I wrote about that story in my book because it was so preposterous. That was the night that Ralphus was born, so to speak. And what had happened was a couple nights before that was a pay-per-view, or maybe a week before, where I showed up. I was a TV champion. I had no match, and they had actually booked me to work against a Goldberg like knockoff or whatever, like a mini Goldberg guy. And I beat him, and it was kind of a mocking thing. And then the next day, Goldberg said, I saw him at the arena for Nitro, and he of course wasn't on the pay-per-view, because back then top stars in WCW just worked whenever they wanted. They didn't even really work on every pay-per-view, which is so ridiculous when you think about it. But he said to me, he goes, I hope it was worth it, Jericho. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, I hope it was worth it. And I said, dude, I hope what was worth it? And he said, the fact that you did this comedy thing. And I was like, dude, I just work here, man. I didn't write any of this stuff. So anyways, then after that, I was like, well, screw it, I'm just going to go for it all the way. So then I was supposed to mimic Goldberg and amass my own security posse, because he always came to the ring with this big gaggle of security. And instead of getting like a bunch of big guys, I wanted to get a bunch of misfits. I thought that'd be funnier. And there was this guy that was always hanging around in the back. Had these really bad teeth that just stuck out like punji sticks in Vietnam, like spikes that you would step on and get poisoned and die. And like no teeth in the middle. He's a big fat bulbous guy. And he was always super friendly, like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And I was like, hey man, do you want to come and be on TV? Sure. What do you want me to do? Well, just come with me and like be my bodyguard, and would you mind wearing this half shirt so your stomach sticks out? No problem. So it was like the easiest business relationship ever. So then I pitched it to Bischoff that, how about I get lost, on my way to the ring, just like Spinal Tap when they got lost under the stage. And he thought it was great, and he actually, put some input in it and said that I was supposed to wrestle Wrath, who was Bryan Clark, who was one of the Glacier guys. And so I would get lost into the ring. I couldn't find get lost on my way to the ring. Couldn't find my way out to the arena, and then Bryan Clark would get mad and come out and find me and chase me, and that'd be the end of it. So we practiced it a couple times, and I finally walk outside the arena, and the door closes behind me. It's one of those ones that automatically locks. And of course, when I go to open the door, which in practice was locked, this time, I guess due to my superhuman live TV strength, I was able to open the door after it closed. But of course, I'm supposed to be locked out, so then I had to pretend that I accidentally knocked it shut again. And then there's a bunch of, commotion going on, so the security guard that was 2 doors down opens the door to peek his head out to see what's going on, and I'm like, shut the door, shut the door! So then he shuts the door, and then Bryan Clark comes chasing me, and then I'm running, and there's this line where they said, if you get to this line, you can stop running, because the way that the camera angle is, they can't see you. You'll be off. I remember this so well. Yeah, so I run as fast as I can, and then Bryan Clark is chasing me, and I get to the point, the line where I'm supposed to stop, and I take a couple extra steps, and I stop, and then Bryan Clark runs past me, and we're laughing. And then this is on a live Thunder, and then I find out afterwards that the camera actually could see us. And so Clark is chasing me, wanting to kill me, and I get to the certain point and stop, and he runs past me, and I slap his ass on the way by, and we're laughing. And this was all on live TV, and on the replay as well. So classic WCW, but that was my homage to Spinal Tap.
Okay, and if I could ask one more question, Chris, did you ever have any serious talks or any thoughts at all about going to TNA and maybe working with Christian again?
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, TNA, they have issues and problems, but that's the wrestling business, and they're still going through a lot of growing pains as well. Because if you look at their company, they've really got their ducks in a row as far as constantly expanding and moving forward. I mean, there's a lot of creative issues, in my opinion, and just things like the cuts that they use, the edits are very maddening. It infuriates me just watching the show. Like, who's in charge of editing the show? It drives me crazy. But, I mean, I think it'd be a lot of fun to go there. I mean, Christian's great. AJ Styles is a great performer. Smo Joe. There's a lot of great guys there. So I think the last pay-per-view was awesome. I watched it, and I thought it was really, really well done. And just as a matter of fact, I was talking with Dave earlier about Awesome Kong. I think she's great. It's my favorite thing about women's wrestling I've seen in about 10 years since Bull Nakano was in the WWF.
Well, Chris, ultimately, what you had a big decision to make. I mean, what caused you to go or not? What was the pros and cons of TNA in your mind? I mean, obviously it's close to home, the schedule's easier. But it's not the big stage. I mean, what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I didn't have an axe to grind with Vince McMahon, and I didn't have any issues or problems working for Vince. I mean, there's ups and downs as there is with any boss and any job, especially at a high level, a big-time corporation like the WWE. But I didn't leave. I think I'm one of the few guys that left on really good terms. To the point of when I left, I had some great conversations with the boss afterwards, and I explained to him I needed a break. He explained that the door was open and we'd love to have you back, and you're this, that, and the other thing. So, of course, I'm going to talk to other places when the time comes for me to come back, and when I decided that it was right. But Vince will always have the upper hand because I don't have any problems with him. I think there's a lot of guys that go to TNA with a point to prove against Vince, and whether it be Angle or Christian or guys like Conan or guys like AJ or Joe that want to do their own thing, but the Dudleys are there and guys like that. Like it seems that if you have an issue with Vince, it's a great place to go. But I never had that issue, so the WWE always had the upper hand, and plus, like Dave just said, it is the big stage, and at 36 years old, I don't plan to be wrestling for another 10 years, and I think you want to strike while the iron is hot and get in there and do, at the top level in the WWE, that's where you can make, enough money where you don't have to work anymore, and not that I'm in any kind of financial straits, but I think if you're going to beat your body up and do these things that we're going to do, I'd rather do it at the highest level possible for the maximum amount of compensation, especially when I don't have any personal issues with the people that run the show. And as a matter of fact, I kind of like them. So I almost would say that I'm friends with them, So I think that's basically the big difference between my decision with the WWE and my decision with TNA.
Now, you mentioned being burned out there at the end, and I guess the second to last match you had was SummerSlam with John Cena, which just had an incredible crowd. And when you were in the middle of that match, and they were so passionate, was there ever a point that you just thought, what am I doing? I don't want to leave.
No, and that's a really good question, man, because the thing is, it was very interesting because at that time when I decided to take a break, had I not taken a break, I don't think I would have had that angle with Cena. That was actually a lot of my ideas in that, listen, I'm leaving, let me work with Cena and pass whatever torch I can pass along to him. And that's when he first came over from SmackDown to Raw, he had kind of a real stigma that he wasn't a very good wrestler, and I disagreed with that 100%. I disagreed with it back in 2002 when I begged Vince to let me work with him. And people forget that I actually even put him over at one of the pay-per-views in the summer of 2002. And I always knew that he was going to be a star because I knew he had charisma. And he used to do this backwards interview where he would talk and say, "You didn't hear me? Let me rewind." And he'd rewind it, and it was really cool. And I just thought, man, it's such a unique thing in a land when there's not a lot of unique players and not a lot of unique ideas. So, like I said, I don't think I would have been in that position to work with John for the championship had I not been leaving. And then when we actually started the program, and it was a great angle because he was a great babyface. I did, the heel job that I always do, which I think that people really got into and enjoyed. But by the time the match came, all that was out the window. Because people, I think I had amassed a lot of respect over the years of people knowing they always got 100% when they saw me, no matter heel, babyface, whatever it was. and they really wanted to see me win the championship, and I think that was really cool because that was the first time they ever had the dueling chance with Cena, and that was kind of the start of it. And I rather than saying what am I doing, why am I leaving, it was more like, see, this is where I should be. This is what I do, and then this is what I do best. And I left exactly where I should have left at, like at the top position you could leave at, challenging for the title and losing, and then the next night getting fired, which was awesome. I mean, that was one of the best, exits ever, in my opinion, to where I know a lot of people were saying, why did Jericho get carried out of the ring like a coward? I mean, that was BS. It's like that's the way that I called it right on the spot. I called the security guards to pick me up and carry me out. You can see me say, pick me up, because I wanted to leave as a coward, as a blubbering, crying, just a pathetic character, because that's what a heel is. And then that to me was way better than going out like waving at the crowd and getting a standing ovation and all that sort of stuff. Like, that sucks, man. Like, that's weak-minded people. I would rather go out getting laughed at and booed and begging for my job. I mean, that's it right there, man, for me.
You should have tried to get Ralphus back for that last spot.
Yeah, you know what, man? I don't think that would be a good idea, because even when I was working with Ralphus in WCW before I left, he was already talking about getting a contract, and he was talking about getting a lawyer, and he was obsessed with all the chicks he was picking up, and, it just, I actually remember one time me and Dean were getting ready for a match, and Ralph was putting baby oil on his arm and putting water in his head. So it was really out of control with that guy,
Wanted to very quickly go to Steve in Nashville, who has a question regarding, I believe, Eric Bischoff. Steve, what's up?
Yes, good evening, gentlemen. And Y2J, you still are the man no matter what, man. But
right, man. That's true.
what I was going to ask is about Eric Bischoff. The last time I called you, and by the way, you guys are off the air here, and I was just going to ask if you could keep me on while you answer this. But now that he is his contract is up for WWE, I had heard a rumor that he had signed with TNA, or did he, or what is he doing, or what is he going to do?
But Eric
I've heard
Bischoff
nothing about him going to TNA.
Yeah, yes.
I haven't heard anything about Eric Bischoff going to TNA. I mean, anything's possible, but I certainly haven't heard that.
Jericho, what are your thoughts about Bischoff, since obviously you had quite a relationship with him for a while?
Well, I mean, like I said, writing about it with my book, it's one of those things where, I mean, it started off very cool. Eric was great to me. He gave me a chance when no one else never did or wouldn't, especially, I mean, no one else meaning anybody in the WWF, but he was really one of those guys that was just, you could see from month to month just how he got more and more, I'm not going to say drunk with power, but just more and more nonchalant as WWE was winning and doing really well. He just really got very arrogant over time, to where, he would walk around the hallways wearing sweats and his baseball cap on backwards and have these crazy meetings where he would, threaten to starve Ric Flair's family, or threaten that, or proclaim that he guaranteed the WWE was going out of business in 6 months.
10 years ago this week.
Oh, really? I remember
10 years ago this week.
Florida,
That was a meeting with that Ric Flair never drew a dime in the business.
Yeah, he said Piper, Savage, and Hogan, I think, were the only three guys that ever drew money, and Flair was right there. Actually, yeah, and, but he just really got kind of obsessed with this. And actually, when he came to the WWE, he was a much different guy. He was actually a really nice guy. So I actually like Eric a lot. But during the time in WCW, he really he became somebody different.
Hey, guys, really quick, what is he doing now? Not
a lot.
Scott Baio was 45 and single, man. That was his show.
Dave, how's the ROH show?
Nigel McGuinness is in the ring with Jay Briscoe, and I tell you, when I went back out, I went in the upper deck and looked down. Oh, when there's 300 people in a 14,000-seat building or 13,000-seat building, when you're in the upper deck, oh, geez.
Did you feel like a geek?
Oh, yeah. I don't know I don't know that I feel like a geek because I'm on the phone with Chris Jericho, but perhaps if I was here without being on the phone with you guys, I'd feel like a monster geek, yeah.
Chris, did they ever contact you about coming in and working some Ring of Honor dates?
That's one thing. I get contacted by everybody. over the last couple of years, from Ring of Honor to All Japan to New Japan to TNA to WWE and to, backyard, literally a backyard wrestling federation in Australia asked me how much it would cost to bring me over. So it's like, that's one good thing to know that people are interested. But I've actually become a fan of Ring of Honor over the last 6 months or so, and Gabe's been very good with sending me a lot of DVDs. And I support every wrestling show on pay-per-view. Maybe I have too much time on my hands or too much money to waste or whatever it may be. But I bought both of Ring of Honor shows, and I love it, man. I think there's some great stuff on there. It reminds me a lot of old ECW. Some of it's a little bit of a train wreck that I don't like, not because I'm a WWE guy, but because I just understand about psychology and selling and those sort of things. There's some really, really good guys there. So I have become a fan of Ring of Honor, absolutely.
Who are some of the guys you're really impressed with?
In Ring of Honor?
Yeah.
Well,
actually, pretty much anywhere on the Indies. Who are you impressed with just outside of WWE?
Well, I like Samoa Joe. I like AJ Styles. I think both those guys are really good. I like Sabin and Alex Shelley. I think Black Machismo's done a great job with taking a kind of a goofy gimmick and taking it to the next level and making it really good. I think I like Bryan Danielson. I like Nigel McGuinness. I like Marufuji. He's very cool to watch. It's a lot of fun to see him. I think, what's the name of that guy? He's the manager in Ring of Honor.
Larry Sweeney.
Larry
Sweeney. I watched him in the first match tonight, and the first thing I thought of is, why is he here? That guy is, he reminds me of Bobby Heenan at like 20.
Well, and I agree. It's just one of those things with, Vince doesn't really use managers too much anymore, but a guy like that who can talk that well, there's got to be a place for him in New York. So, I mean, I think he's got star potential just because of the way he can talk. So, I mean, like we talked earlier, I think Awesome Kong is I love that for some reason. She just really supported me as well. And so there's a lot of really talented people there. It's just not as many as there used to be. But there still are places to find people, find guys and girls.
And we have an email question here for Chris. Somebody that wants you to tell the story of your Smoky Mountain Wrestling bloody massacre.
Yeah, once again, and it's funny, I feel like a corporate shill, but it really is. Like, all these questions are all really discussed at length in my book, and that's the cool thing about it, is that I had so many great experiences to talk about, and a lot of them, and that's why I kind of I didn't really focus on writing the WWE story of my career, because I think a lot of that stuff is known, and that makes for a great story for another book, but so much stuff that I did was pre-internet and Wrestling Insider newsletters, besides Dave's, of course, but so, I mean, a lot of people don't know a lot of these stories. They may have heard them a little bit or heard some rumors of them or legends of them, whatever it may be. But what happened with that match was it was called Night of the Legends in Knoxville for Smoky Mountain. It was the biggest show of the year, kind of like Smoky Mountain's WrestleMania. And Lance Storm and I were the Thrill Seekers, and we were wrestling. We were going to wrestle against the Heavenly Bodies, Jimmy Del Rey and Tom Pritchard, who were in the WWE. They had gone to the WWE at that point. So we had worked an angle with them, and over the course of this angle that we worked, it built up really well and did some pretty good promos, and I learned a lot about how to do promos from Jim Cornette and Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And I also, for some reason, I was swimming in a pool in Tokyo, in Japan, with Ultimo Dragon. We were just screwing around on the diving board, and he implanted this idea in my head that I'd be able to do the shooting star press. We were just screwing around. He said, "You can probably do the shooting star press. You're pretty agile." And meanwhile, he was 10 times more agile than I was, and I was thinking, why the heck did he try it? What the hell what was he thinking? But anyway, so I got this in my head, like, I have to learn how to do the shooting star press. If I don't learn how to do the shooting star press, I'll never make it. There's no way. So I just decided, like, it was going to be this big move that I was going to debut at Night of the Legends. So I had been trying it off this diving board right in Morristown, Tennessee, in this YMCA pool, and of course I was doing it, and like, wow, this is easy. I can do this. So about 3 hours before the show, in the Knoxville Coliseum, Night of Legends, I went up to the top rope and just decided I was going to do a shooting star press. What the hell? I don't need a spot, and I don't need a mat in the ring. I'm just going to do it. because I can do it off a diving board, right? What's the difference? Well, the difference is that it's not a diving board, you idiot. So I jumped off, and I kind of swung around and had no idea where the hell I was in the air. And by some stroke of God's hand, I didn't kill myself or worse. And I landed in a similar position to a shooting star press, but I landed right on my right arm. My whole body weight landed on it. I kind of got up, and I looked at my arm, and I saw this divot in my arm. It looked like a roller coaster, but it just didn't look right. It didn't hurt or anything like that. It just was like that bump and that divot shouldn't be there. And Lance happened to be watching me from afar, and he thought that I had killed myself. And I went over to him. I said, "Does this look right to you?" And he said, "No, it doesn't." And then I shook my arm, and it looked like one of those rubber pencils that you shake back and forth where it's bending, but it's not really breaking. It's just like, and it's like, wow, I better go to the hospital. And right before I went to the hospital, I said to Lance, like, did I at least get shooting star? Like, did I at least hit it? And he's like, not even close. And typical Lance honesty. He was like, yeah, you didn't even come close to hitting it. So I went to the hospital, and the doctor told me that he said, well, there's no way you could have broken your arm because you'd be screaming in pain and this, that, and the other thing. Of course, they gave me the x-ray, and I'd broken my radius in half. So he said, well, this is ridiculous. I can't believe you're not screaming in pain. And I wasn't, just too stupid, or growing up in Winnipeg where my bones were still frozen or whatever it may be. So he goes, well, you can't wrestle tonight. You got to get surgery right now. And, of course, being a lunkhead 24-year-old wrestler or 23-year-old wrestler, I said, well, that's not an option to myself. I said, well, I just have this I'm supposed to be the guest ring bell ringer or something like that at this match. So I just have to go and sit in the front row. I'm not going to wrestle. I'm just going to sit there, make an appearance, and I'll come in first thing tomorrow morning and get my surgery. So he's like, okay, no problem. Of course, I go straight to the arena, and I start putting my gear on, and then, of course, Cornette finds out about this, and he said, you know, what happened to you? And I said, well, I broke my arm. Now, this is satellite radio, right?
Yes, you can say what you want.
Okay, so how can you be so fucking stupid to break your spine before the match? What the fuck's wrong with you? And I said, well, don't worry, Jim, I'm still going to wrestle. Well, okay, then, no problem. So as soon as he found I was going to wrestle, then that was fine. And, of course, just so preposterous that he would let me wrestle, and so preposterous that I would want to. And I saw Terry Funk, actually, before the match, and he said, what happened? I said, well, I broke my arm. He goes, wow. What are you going to do? I said, well, I'm still going to wrestle. And he goes, I said, you know, I'm a dumbass. I'm still going to wrestle. He goes, well, I'm a dumbass too, but even I wouldn't be that stupid as to wrestle with a broken arm. But, you know, whatever. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go do it. And went in there, and Dr. Tom and Jimmy took really good care of me, and it was like the most ridiculous match ever. I was doing like all these crazy punches with my left hand and doing all these karate kicks and one-arm body slams. And meanwhile, I have a broken arm, like completely shattered, broken in half. And all I have is a soft cast over top of it. But, you know, it didn't matter. I was going to wrestle, and that's all there was to it. And part of the match, the finish was going to be that I get color, and then I'm bleeding all over the place. And then the referee calls the match. But I beg and plead to please just let me continue on. And the heavenly bodies continue to beat on me. But then by the fluke of nature, I'm able to roll up one of the guys and get the big babyface victory, and everyone's excited. Well, that's basically what happened. But when I got the color, I had like aspirin in my system, and I think I was in shock from having a broken arm. And there was one rumor that I had, gotten color with my left hand, which isn't true. It was my right hand, but it's just that I was just really, really, like the blood was really thin, and it just looked like Carrie, like this bucket of blood had been dumped over my head, like when the Brood used to do the bucket of blood, or whatever the hell they called it, the blood bath. And that's exactly what it looked like. And the best part of all of it was I was covered in blood on the floor selling, and then this redneck guy is looking at me, and he's like, that ain't real blood. And he puts his finger in the puddle of my blood, and he licks it. He's like, yeah, that ain't real blood. First of all, I'm thinking, like, why are you licking blood? And second of all, how can it not be real? Do I have a pump leading from like underneath my skin going on top of my head, or did I have like a condom full of chicken blood that I smashed on my head that you didn't see? Like it was just like, oh, it was so disgusting. It was just all over the place, and that was the last match I ever had in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And the next day I went for surgery, and I was out. They told me I was going to be out for 16 weeks, but I ate a lot of calcium pills, true story, and I was back wrestling in Japan in 7 weeks.
Now, when you were sitting out that 16 weeks, did you ever have the thought after that experience that I'm never doing this again?
No, that's one thing that's really cool about I had this goal when I was about 10 years old that I wanted to be in the WWF. Actually, when I was about 12 is when it started. And I back, I was about 86 or so, and it was all about the 6'8", 300-pound guys. And I was a shade under 6 feet and probably about 190 at the time. But that never, I was like one of those guys that just didn't notice. It was like an ugly stripper. Like, what is she thinking? Like, she just doesn't know. And like, I didn't realize that I was small. Like, I knew I was, but I didn't think it was going to hinder me at all. This is what I'm going to do, and this is all there is to it. So I went and got, all of these breaks in all these different countries where size wasn't as much of an issue, and it was more about just being a good performer and working on your actual wrestling skills and connecting with the crowd, with your personality, and with your, your style of work and that sort of thing. So I never looked back, like, as many times as I should have quit, and it was probably about 100 times, 200, 300, 400 times. To me, there was never any option of quitting. It never crossed my mind. So even when I was out, the next day after I had my surgery, the next day I was in the gym doing the pec deck and working on my legs, just doing whatever I could just to continue along, and not buying the fact that I was going to be out for 16 weeks. I had to miss a Japanese tour the next week, and I said, well, there's no way I'm missing 2 Japanese tours, A, because I don't want to lose my job with Tenryu, and B, I can't afford it, and C, there's just no way. Iron will, I'm just going to heal myself up and fill these calcium pills, and that's just going to be the way that it is. So with every setback I had, I just took the negative and turned it into a positive and used it to my advantage to make the next step to finally achieve this goal of becoming a WWE wrestler.
Let's take some calls. You can come in at you can call in at 1-800-878-PLAY. Let's go to Dan in Chicago, who has a question for Jericho. Dan, what's up?
What's up, Chris? How you doing? It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Hey, man. Great. How you doing?
Good. I actually have a musical question for you, if you don't mind.
No problem.
A year ago, like in May of 2006, you were on the Eddie Trunk show with Sebastian Bach. And Axl Rose called in, and he said he was going to show up in studio. And he actually did show up in the studio, and he was there. What was that like for you?
That was pretty cool. I was doing Eddie Trunk, which is a rock and roll DJ in New York City, with Sebastian Bach and Scott Ian from Anthrax. And we always do what we call the Metal Summit, which is just a bunch of guys sitting around talking obscure heavy metal stuff and just shooting the breeze and hanging out. And we're sitting there just talking about whatever, and halfway through the conversation, Sebastian is like, dude, he calls Axl Rose and put him on the air, and he's kind of talking about, he's rehearsing for the Guns N' Roses tour, and Eddie goes, well, if you want to come by, just let us know, and we were all thinking, there's no way this guy's going to come by. It's one of the biggest recluses in rock and roll history. And about 20 minutes later, it's like, holy shit, Axl is here. Like, you got to be kidding me. So what happens is he showed up, and he had this lady come into the room first, this older lady. She walked in the room. She kind of like sniffed the air a bit and kind of held her hand up for a couple seconds. It's like, is she casting a spell? Like, what is going on? And then he came in, and I found out later that she was spiritual advisor.
Wow.
And she reads the room and reads the vibrations in the room to decide whether or not Axl can be there, and she liked all of our vibes, and he came in, and the radio station, which is a big time rock station in New York City, 104.3, I think it is, or something like that. But we always have to end right at 2 o'clock. But as soon as Axl came in, Eddie called the program director, and the program director said, like, you stay on the air. It's like we were trying to tap him for the FBI. Keep him on the line as long as you can. If he's on the line until 7 a.m., we'll cancel all the other shows. So that was about it. We had about 4 hours of conversation with Axl. I mean, he's like the coolest guy, nicest guy. But I was talking to Scott Ian, and I said, like, besides Paul McCartney or Mick Jagger or Elton John walked in the room, this is probably the biggest rock star in the world to have on this show. And, we're talking about Wasp and Iron Maiden and just shooting the breeze and telling all these great stories between the two of us, or between the five of us. And you never saw 4 loudmouths, me, Scott, Sebastian, and Eddie, with nothing to say. As soon as he came in, we're just like, hey, Axl, how you doing? No one really knew what to do, So it was really cool. It reminded me of the time when I met Bono at the Hard Rock Cafe in Tokyo. And me and Dr. Luther, a good friend of mine that wrestled in FMW named Lenny St. Clair, we saw Bono, and we see Bono there. Let's go tell him. We're going to tell him right now that U2's a sellout. They used to be so, like, cutting edge, and now they're, like, disco. And let's go tell him, yeah, let's go give him a piece of our mind. We go up to him, and it's like, Bono! You're awesome, man. I love you. And then, like, the big security guards shoot us away. But Jericho fears Bono will be the next sign that we see at the arenas.
I remember at the show, you were like, if he leaves, I'll block that door. He ain't getting out. I'll take him out or whatever. And Eddie Trunk was, like, freaking, like, don't you do anything. And you're sitting there, like, asking him all these cool questions. Everybody was freaking out, wondering what you were going to say to him.
Oh, because I'm always honest. Because I actually got in an on-air fight with the lead singer of Queensryche one time. So Eddie Trunk is always scared of what I'm going to say. But I'm fans of all these guys, but not really. I don't have a problem saying, asking him questions. And he said, "Does anybody here have any Axl stories? Anything to say to Axl?" And I was like, "Axl, I got a bone to pick with you." And Eddie said, "Please, Jericho, don't blow this for me. If you blow this for me, we're not friends anymore." And I was like, "No, calm down." I said, "In 1988, I came and saw you with Iron Maiden. You were opening the show, and I asked you to sign my program, and you said, 'I'll be right back.' And then you went inside the arena, and you never came back." I said, "You signed it. I want to know why." And he said, "Well, you're just lucky that I didn't take your girlfriend up to the hotel room and tell you I'd be right back." He said, "We used to do that all the time too." So, but it was great, man. Having a guy like that just shooting the breeze. It was really, really cool. It was one of those cool moments in your life.
And my other question is for you. Where did your love for music come from? I've actually seen your band too, and I've really enjoyed it. And I actually met you, and you were nice to me. Where did your love for music come from? And I'll hang up and listen.
If I was nice to you, it was a mistake because I don't like anybody. But I actually, when I was a kid, I got really into music at an early age and really into wrestling, and that's all. What I wanted to do was be a rock star or be a wrestler. So even I was in bands all throughout high school. My band was called Scimitar. We were a three-piece Iron Maiden cover band. Even though Iron Maiden has 5 people in it, I don't really know. We thought 3 was enough. And even when I started wrestling, I still did demos and played in bands. I had a band called Great Caesar's Ghost with Dr. Luther, another band called Jesus a Go-Go, another band called Blackstone Menace. And I still always, wrote my songs and demoed them and recorded them. And then when I got a chance to hook up with the guys from Stuck Mojo and form Fozzy, it was just a really natural progression. So it was something that I always wanted to do when I was 12. It's just that it seemed like becoming a wrestler would be a little bit more of a natural thing rather than wanting to be, in a big band, especially coming from Winnipeg. It's the Guess Who and the Crash Test Dummies. Those are about the only 2 Winnipeg rock and roll heroes that you can find. So it seemed like wrestling was a little bit more of a natural progression for me.
Speaking of music, did you ever get your Loverboy tape back?
I never did. That son of a bitch, as far as being a showman in wrestling or understanding the show business element, was always David Lee Roth. I thought that guy, for whatever reason, I always wanted to be the David Lee Roth of wrestling, like just a total flamboyant showman, just, say things that seemingly made no sense, but I could make them sound cool. And I just saw Van Halen last week in Indianapolis, and Dave, it was just like, I felt like I was 15 again, and just watching him like my hero on stage, still wearing a top hat and jumping up and down on the giant blown up microphone. And it's like that to me is I think that's the number one misconception about wrestling that even guys in the business still don't get. It's not about how big you are. It's not about how many moves you can do. It's about the show business aspect. At least for me, it always was. And the guys I always liked the best in wrestling were the guys who could really put on a great show and have a great character and just connect with the crowd and make them buy into what you were doing, heel, babyface, whatever. And I think that's becoming almost a lost art where it's becoming very sterile and a lot of guys are relying more on other people to do that work for them. But you have to find your own character and you have to find your own vibe. And it's been like that ever since wrestling started, from Gorgeous George to guys like Superstar Billy Graham or Jesse Ventura or Hogan and guys like Savage and all the guys that I used to grow up just thinking were just the Piper, like just awesome characters. You could put them, not even in wrestling, put them into a comedy show or put them into a band or put them, whatever it may be. It was just this larger than life character that you bought into, and we're seeing fewer and fewer of those these days, which I think is a problem.
Chris, when you go back to the business and everything, I mean, do you have any specific goals or, and how long, if I ask you right now, how long do you think you want to go, or is that just something that you're just going to go until it's no fun and then you're going to stop?
Well, I always said that I wasn't retiring. I never said I was retiring. That was never my intention. It was always just to take a break from the business. And, I was just, mentally I was really burned out. Physically I was fine, but mentally I was just, after 15 years of just wrestling, I wanted to take a step away, take a break, spend some more time at home and work on some of these other projects that I had. But I said, when the time is right, I'll go back and I'll go back better than ever, and I'll know that when the time comes. And I was very smart. I learned from Bob Backlund and Jesse Ventura way back. I remember Jesse told me in '89 when I met him at a celebrity hockey game that my dad was playing in. He said, "It's not what you make, it's what you save." It's kind of a cliched thing, but in the wrestling business, that's the truth. And in the years, well, actually all the years in the WWE when I was making top dollar, I made sure to save it and do things with it that were smart. So, I never needed the business for that part of it, and that was very cool. It's nice to know you can just kind of step back, and once you don't have those type of restrictions, it's a lot easier to play by your own rules. So when the time comes for me to go back, how long will I stay? I'm not sure. I mean, what are my goals to go back? Just to go back and just to stir it up and have some fun and kind of. I almost feel like, for better or for worse, there's only a handful of guys that had the same style of wrestling that I had, because training in Mexico and Japan and Europe and Canada and Calgary style. There's fewer and fewer guys. They've either retired or they've passed away. And it's almost like there's not too many guys that work the same style that I work, and I almost feel like that's a lost side of the wrestling business right there alone. And I think that's something that I wouldn't mind trying to impart a couple of these tidbits. I'm not going to say of knowledge or something like that, like I'm a Jedi or something, but I think it's just a different style that enabled me to take it to the next level. And like I said, just to have some fun and maybe help some of these guys with their characters too, because there's a lot of guys that have decent characters, but they don't have great characters. And because the bar has been lowered, they're considered as great characters. They will be if they have good sparring partners like anybody else, like, a good UFC fighter. If he doesn't have somebody to push him to spar with, or a boxer, they won't get any better. And I don't know if there's a lot of guys out there that know how to do those sort of things, and guys that aren't afraid to bend the rules. Not break the rules, but bend them and kind of shape things and think outside of the box. I think everybody thinks inside the box now, or at least the majority of the guys that I see. And wrestling has always been about there's no rules, there's no limit. You just you don't have to color within the lines when you're a wrestler. You can do things that no one else does and act like no one else does. And I mean, Brian Pillman told me straight out. He said, if you want to make it in this business, you have to do things that no one has ever done before, and be original. And I remembered those lines, and I remember that advice, and I've lived my career by that, no matter what it is, whether it's, especially in wrestling, but anything else that I've done. You got to think outside the box and think differently than everybody else, and that's usually a good way to take it to the next step.
Are
there any guys that have come along in the last 2 years, or even guys that were there when you were there the last time, when you kind of watch TV and go like, this is a challenge, I want to get something out of this guy. This guy's like, whether it's one step away or just needs the right dance partner, and guys that you were like kind of like looking forward to working with if you get the chance?
Well, I think that right before I left, I think Cena was the best example of that. Like I said, I didn't buy for a second that he wasn't a good worker, and I think he's more than proven that that's the case. So I feel good about that. I think there's other guys, especially I think guys like Kennedy, I think guys like MVP. Those guys are good. They're not great yet, but they're good, and they'll get better with more experience. You can't teach experience. That's the one thing. You can teach someone how to do a move, or you can kind of teach someone how to deliver lines. You can teach someone how to work out, but you can't teach experience. And I think that's one thing that a lot of guys just don't have by no fault of their own. I mean, these guys are working just as hard as I did, but they haven't had 15 years of international experience and have all these different colors that you can paint with to paint a different type of picture from anybody else. But there's a few guys out there that I think are really starting to I think AJ Styles is a great personality. I think Christian's doing great. Edge is great. There's a lot of guys out there that are really kind of working on that personality part of it. I think Boogeyman, I love Boogeyman. I mean, is he a worker? Hell no. But does he have a great personality, and has he gone way farther than he ever would have? A gimmick? Yes. And that's what wrestling's all about.
Chris, you mentioned musical influences, and as far as wrestling influences are concerned, is it a cool thing to see a guy like Alex Shelley, who has talked about growing up watching Nitro and being a huge Jericho fan and sort of in some ways patterning his style around you?
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that before. I've never heard that before. No, it is very cool to hear those influences from, I worked with Johnny Jeter once in OVW, and he flew his mom up, and I didn't know until afterwards that he actually was that's why I got into wrestling, was because of Jericho, and his mom being there was a very emotional moment for him because his mom knew how much I had meant to him in his life. And I think that's one thing that's very cool. That's one thing as far as being around since 1990. I mean, there's people that started watching me in Calgary in 1990 that are still fans of mine today, and it's very much of an honor to become ingrained in somebody's life where you become a part of their lives. The same way that, let's say Metallica is that way for me. I bought their first record when I was 12 back in 1982 or 83, and followed this band and basically grew up with this band, and they were just kids when they started too. And now I'll be a fan of theirs for life because they mean so much to me and help me through so many tough times. And that's one thing that's cool for guys that have longevity in this business or any other form of entertainment, that you get the guys that are in the business that have been influenced, or just fans that have been around for many years watching what I do. And that's why I think it's always been very cool that people follow me for whatever it is I do, all these different projects that I have. And the majority of them have been very successful because people are always interested in what I do because I'm become a part of their lives. And I mean, like I said, for me, that's the way Shawn Michaels was for me, or Owen Hart, or Ricky Steamboat, or those guys like that. And it was really cool to get a chance to meet them. And one of my favorite angles that I ever had was against Shawn, because it was kind of like, this was the guy that I emulated when I was a kid. Same tights, same hair. At one point, I even wanted to call myself Sean Skywalker. I thought that would be a cool wrestling name. But then I realized I didn't want to rip him off too badly. And then I was going to call myself Jack Action, but Lance, in his infinite wisdom, told me that it sucked. Lance is very straightforward.
It's ridiculous.
So I settled on Chris Jericho instead. But like I said, to know that you have that kind of influence, you've had a positive place in somebody's life is a real honor. It's very cool to know that.
Let's go to Hannibal in, I don't know where Hannibal is, but he wants to talk about Chris Jericho and ask some questions. So Hannibal, what's up?
Okay, the question I wanted to ask, though, it seemed like, in TNA, that, before Russo, you had people like, Rhino, Team 3D, and you had, Jeff Hardy that put people over. But then, it seems like, there's a lot of these guys that ain't really got no good mic skills. So would it be important for, guys with no, mic skills to be, put over?
Is that a question for me?
As to the question.
What is the question?
Well, actually, the question is, though, would it be pointless for, like former WWE guys putting over TNA up-and-coming guys? They ain't got no mic skills.
It's not pointless when it's done correctly. In fact, if it's done right, it should be very beneficial to making new stars, because those guys should have some credibility, and if you bring them up to your level, that's part of the art of preserving the species, so to speak, is continually putting the younger guys over. So, I think that's one of the roles, to me, of the older wrestlers, is to either put them over, not necessarily always lose to them, because I don't think that that's what you want, but to bring them up to their level and, create new stars.
Yeah, losing and winning means nothing in wrestling. I really believe that, and I still do to this day. I think that, you see losing and winning. I remember, Scott Hall put me over once on Nitro, and I came out of it looking even worse than I did before the match. Or,
I remember that one, too.
It's just one of those things where these things happen, and you think, well, I beat Scott Hall, or, Kidman beat Hogan. It means nothing. And the really smart guys know how to bury you and know how to put you over. And it's very easy to do that when you're on a different level from younger guys or guys at a lower spot, because you basically have to do what the guy on top tells you to do, and that's all there is to it. So once again, to me, the art of wrestling is one of the biggest parts of wrestling is the politicking behind the scenes, but beyond that, it's more about how can you make everybody look good. And that's something that I always took a lot of pride in. How can I make Viscera look good? And you were there, Dave. I think it was in San Jose.
That's right. And I remember that match. I was kind of amazed. It was on a TV match, yeah.
Yeah, and going in there, you think, well, what the hell am I going to do to this guy? But we actually had, from what I recall, a fairly good match because, you trust each other and you work together. I mean, I loved working with Hogan. You say what you want about Hogan. He was probably one of my top 5 guys to work with because it was so damn easy and because he trusted me. He knew that he would just have to stand there and I would fall down and people would go nuts and he would make me look good because I knew what I was doing. And I worked with him for a whole summer because just for that reason, on all the house shows, and we did a couple TV matches and that sort of thing. I mean, because you understand it's all about making each other look good, and if some guys don't know how to do that, then it's my responsibility to do that for guys. And obviously there's some cases where that just doesn't work. If you're being groomed to work a title position or whatever it is, you still gotta whip some ass and make it, get the upper hand and make a definitive statement. But I was the champion. I worked with Maven in, I can't remember where he was from, like Raleigh, North Carolina, or somewhere in Virginia or something like that. And it was on Raw, and they gave him a title match, Hometown Hero. And there was one finish towards the end where people honestly thought that Maven was going to be the world champion. And not just the people in the arena, people watching at home. And that was really cool to know that, like, as low on the totem pole as Maven was, for that 5 seconds, people thought, holy smokes, they're going to put the belt on Maven. And that's what your job is to do, because we're manipulating, we're puppet masters, and we're in charge of all the emotions. And that's one thing that Bret Hart always likes to say is, when he came into the business, the wrestlers controlled the emotions. But then as the business moved forward, the fans controlled the wrestlers. And that's not right. The wrestlers control. We're the puppet masters. And as smart as some people, as fans are nowadays, you can still fool them. You can still toy with their emotions. And I love to do that because I like making people who think they know everything sometimes think that, maybe there's something more to this. That's the real fun part of wrestling for me, or the fun part of being an entertainer or a performer, all those different things.
Oh, okay. But one question, too. Do y'all think TNA, need to get a mid-card title? You think that's going to happen?
Or new championships?
Yeah.
I would, under normal circumstances, I would say that they don't need new championships, but I actually do think they should probably do an X Division Tag Team Championship just because it'll allow Shelley and Sabin to carry something for months at a time and develop another thing, because I don't know that putting them against heavyweights, just the mindset of the way a lot of people think, is going to be beneficial to them. But and I know that's been discussed. That, generally speaking, I would say no, but I could add that one, but no more than that for sure.
Yeah, I disagree on that one. I think that you should, Sabin and Shelley are good enough to have the tag team championships, and I think you water it down when you add a so-called junior heavyweight championship. Not that it couldn't work, but I just think that TNA is one of those companies that's it's in a real transition period. They have to drop all pretensions of big, small, little, large. The X Division title was never first as a small guy's title. It was a specific style of work and a specific style of wrestling. That's why I loved it when Samoa Joe had the title. Probably one of the biggest guys in the company from a weight standpoint, but it was his style that was what the X Division was about. And I think that's the same thing. I mean, the tag team division in TNA, I don't think there's anybody that's as good as the Sabin and Shelley guys, and I think they'd be great with the Dudleys and guys like that who know how to work with guys of all shapes and sizes. Just my opinion.
They've been burying them lately, too, matter of fact, Team 3D. I wonder who's behind all this looking right here, because, this don't seem like, that Russo would go for any older guys, burying the younger guys like that.
Well, you're putting a lot of credit and a lot of detriment towards Russo. He's just one guy. There's a whole group of guys that are in charge, and if Bubba and Devon, especially Bubba, are behind it, I don't think you're going to see a rampant burial. I'd have to say this is not going to be a Nash-type storyline, because Bubba's smarter than that. He's very smart, and he sees, okay, they're a tag team. They're going to be a tag team. They're not splitting up. Who can they work with to have the best possible matches? So I think there's more to it than just a burial. I don't think there's a burial there. I think there's going to be more to it than that. And there might not be. I could be wrong, but I just know Bubba better than that.
We actually had a question about Russo. I guess just basically your thoughts on him. You pretty much, you seem to avoid him for most of your career. Not on purpose, obviously.
Well, actually, that's actually not true, to be honest with you. Once again, another story in A Lion's Tale, available October 25th at a fine bookstore near you. I actually was brought into the WWE through Russo and had phone conversations with him about a year before my contract was up in WCW, because at that point, after the whole Goldberg thing went down, I knew that I had to get out of there. And Don Callis at the time worked very close with Vince Russo and kind of eliminated the middleman and hooked me up. So Russo was the one who brought me into the WWE, and he was very, very much a proponent of mine and, a positive influence to bring me in, him and Jim Ross. The problem that I had was that he went to WCW about a month after I got there, and I think I was kind of caught in the crossfire as being a Russo project. That kind of left me wide open when Russo quit amongst much controversy and hatred, and I was kind of caught, with my pants down going, I didn't have anything to do with it. I don't know this guy. But he actually brought me into the WWE, and the first few angles I had in the WWE when he was there were classic Russo, being in a shark cage with Shamrock and having Howard Finkel as my manager and Curtis Hughes as my bodyguard. And you got to remember back to that stuff when I first came into the WWE. It wasn't all pomp and circumstance, that's for damn sure. Some pretty crazy, bad stuff.
Before we go, Chris, let's get some final thoughts on the book, where people can go for more information, signings, that sort of deal.
Well, I mean, it's out on October 25th, so, I mean, it's out everywhere. Like I said, Amazon's doing really well, and I'm doing a whole about 20 book signings that are on my website at Jericho.com, and there's going to be a bunch of different stuff coming up. So I'm excited. It's a follow your dreams, stranger in a strange land coming-of-age story with wrestling as a background, especially if you followed my career. You're going to have a lot of fun reading some of the ridiculous stuff that happened to me over my career. And I think it's one of the last books by a wrestler that will be able to be written this way, because the business has changed so much. And in this day and age when all you have to do is put yourself up on YouTube and become famous, this is kind of an old-school journey of how I actually, took my career level by level to make it to the WWE.
Well, I want to thank you very much for doing the show today. Everybody head over to ChrisJericho.com for more information. Thank you very much. And, Dave, thanks again for doing the show today. Have fun in the Cow Palace, and hopefully you survive the rest of the evening.
Okay.
So thanks, everybody. We will talk to you all next week.
Tim Sylvia just used his size to dominate Brandon Vera, and Brandon Vera, he looked like a guy out there who needs to be in the 205-pound weight class, and at the end, it was like he had been taught a lesson and everyone knew it except for him. He asked the people, should I stay at heavyweight? And, those people might not have been the right people to ask, because they kind of said that he should. Of course, it was the way he asked the question, and I think it's pretty clear that he shouldn't. He needs to cut to 205. He was intimidated by the guy's size, standing, and Brandon Vera is a great stand-up fighter, and if I don't know that he would do much better with Arlovsky. Maybe if he tagged him, he would. But I don't know. I think that UFC desperately didn't want Tim Sylvia to win, and the crowd certainly didn't want Tim Sylvia to win. But he won kind of he won kind of handily, even though it was a decision.
What did you think about the fact that on the show there was very little mention of Randy Couture?
I think that there is your answer as to why the HBO deal never went through, because UFC. It was really last night watching that show. They are 1980s WWF. When a guy left WWF, even if he was a superstar, his name was erased. I mean, later, by the late 90s, and now, if a guy's a big star, like say a Kurt Angle or somebody like that, they'll make a mention of it. When he was leaving, or with Austin, they made a big production, a stupid big production over it. But in this case, it was like a huge star, and I mean, they were never going to mention it the whole show. The only reason it came up was because Tim Sylvia made a passing reference in his interview, and I think Bonner may have made a reference, in training at the gym or something, because he trained at Extreme Couture. But, they didn't want to bring it up at all, and that tells you, their mentality, which is if you don't work for us, you're not under contract to us, you don't exist.
Yeah, we talked to Mike Coughlin, who was at the press conference, and he said that when Dana got asked about it, the question he was asked was basically, why is Randy saying he's resigned and you've said he's retired? And this made Dana very, very upset. and he did the whole speech about how he's under contract. You know, we still have him locked in. It's not like he can go fight anywhere and this and that. And Mike's impression was that Dana really wanted to launch into a huge tirade, but he knew he just couldn't do it.
I think he really doesn't want to because he knows that whenever it's a fighter against a promoter in a situation like this, the people are always going to side with the fighter. And then when you're thrown in and it's Randy Couture, it makes it worse. So he knows it's a no-win situation. Yet at the same time, I think that, I think Dana, in his mind, believes that he was in the right and that Randy was getting bad advice on what happened. And, it's one of those things. I think that Dana would love to say how much Randy's getting paid, but then you open up that hornet's nest of all the arts guys were fighting over their pay because their show was canceled, and they all thought that since they trained for a fight that they should have at least gotten some money. So there was a big argument, and Don Frye was kind of like the leader of the martial arts people because, he's kind of the veteran and everything like that, and he was talking for everyone to the promoter, and the promoter was saying, like, if you come in, like, one at a time, we'll try to take care of you, and Leland Chapman, who's the son of Dog the Bounty Hunter, just started, throwing a fit and making a big scene. So Don Frye just goes, let's come outside and talk about it. And so they went outside, and when they went outside, Leland Chapman's bodyguard, a Hawaiian guy named Sonny, sucker punched Don Frye and knocked him down and bloodied him up. And Don Frye got up, tackled him, and was pounding on him from the mount when he was pulled off. And that was fight number one. And then later that night, I guess by the entrance of the Sheraton Hotel, they were walking, and Don Frye saw the guy, and he went up to talk to the guy, and the guy punched Don Frye again and knocked him right down, and I guess there's a big dent in the kind of like in the entrance of the hotel, so he knocked him flying. And Don Frye got up, and the guy and Chapman started running, and so that was it. So Don Frye he's probably not feeling too well, and he'd been drinking a lot anyway, but he came back to the bar with his eye all black later that night and was still drinking, so
we have a report here that this Sonny fellow was apparently Leyland's boxing coach.
Okay. I didn't know that.
That would explain the punch.
Yeah, well, you sucker punch a guy, Jeez. So, but it's ludicrous, and I mean, the police have been, the police were called and they came, and I don't know what everything that's going to go down with this thing. I can't believe they booked guys to fly out of Sacramento. I mean, that's like an hour and a half away. Oh, it's just crazy.
Well, I want to talk about UFC, but first off, I want to go to Alex in San Diego, who I believe was at the Fan Fest and can tell us more about it. Alex, are you there? Alex.
Brian?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's going on? Hey, I'm actually at the Ring of Honor show right now in another hallway. Yeah, last night I come up at the elevator to Sheraton. There's Don Frye there knocked out. I didn't see the punch. And then I came here as a vendor. And then the promoter, there's two of them, Rob and Jay. Those are the guys that really kind of stepped up because Chris was the main promoter of the whole shindig. And apparently there was rumors going around that he got jumped in a limo. But from what I heard from Rob is that he just bailed town and the cops were at his house and stuff like that. And apparently a lot of the headliners got paid half up front and then with a check. And then a lot of guys the first night were real optimistic about the checks clearing. But I guess as some of the guys started trying to cash them, they were bouncing. And then Chris was telling the guys, hey, just wait till Monday. Like he had told Piper, wait till Monday. And he split town. And so
Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We've got Dave Meltzer on the line. It's a big show today. We're going to be joined in about a half hour by Chris Jericho talking his new book, A Lion's Tale. You can call in throughout the show, 1-800-878-PLAY. You can send emails to bryan@WrestlingObserver.com. Anything related to pro wrestling or mixed martial arts, give us a call or an email, and we'll discuss it on the show. Dave, what's going on?
We're just in the middle of a Ring of Honor show, and I guess today was a lot better of a day here than the first 2 days, which were the ultimate in fiascos. I mean, this was a disaster of legendary proportions. And I mean, wrestling conventions, a lot of them have been disasters. Probably more have than haven't, but apparently this one took the cake.
You are in San Francisco at the Cow Palace.
I am at the world-famous Cow Palace in a back room right now, yes.
Wow.
And I've been in this building many, many times. It brings me back to my childhood, and there are kind of sad. There's only, a couple of hundred people here, and but the crowd, the people who are here do remind me of the old Cow Palace crowd. They're very into it, and they know Ring of Honor, and they're big time fans. And I think there's only about 350 of them, but the show, and they're doing kind of an old time show. From what I've seen, it's really it's like a lot of an old time wrestling show on the undercard.
How many people are there tonight?
I'd say 350.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So really, it's a good thing you didn't show up yesterday or the day before, because those are the really sad days.
Oh my God! I suppose Friday night. Well, the other thing is it was a lot more organized today. So it wasn't as much of a disaster. But that whole MMA fiasco, what a crazy weekend this ended up being. I mean, I knew it would be a bloodbath, but I didn't think that it would be. I didn't know whose blood it was going to be.
You really didn't expect it to be this big a disaster, because I almost did, really.
Oh no! I expect it to be disaster as far as financially, absolutely. I mean, as far as insanity, you can't predict something to be as insane as this weekend ended up being, with between the fights and the cancellations and the promoter being out of his mind and, just everything that happened. I don't know that you can predict that much craziness.
Did you get any sort of update today on Don Fry?
He was walking around yesterday, and I guess he was okay, but, I mean, he got nailed with punches on two different occasions. He got sucker punched twice by some guy named Sonny, the bodyguard of Leland Chapman. So it was, I don't think that he's going to be too happy today,
I guess we should bring everybody up to speed on Don Fry. What was the story that you heard?
Don Fry, there was a meeting with, I guess a lot of the wrestlers were attempting to get paid by the martial arts promoter because the guy who promoted the wrestling side told them that guy would pay. And some of the martial
I was there actually at the meeting last night at the bar when Rob stood up and told everybody what was going on and asking people if they could get people rides. Like Snuka needed a ride to the airport and someone needed to go pick up Crime Time. I'm here while Rome is burning. It's insane.
I heard that Crime Time was on the way there today and their car broke down, and so they had to get a ride to the building or a jump or something like that. And I also heard that something like 30% of people had gotten checks. Most of those checks were bouncing, and a lot of the other guys just didn't get paid at all.
Well, I know a promoter in San Diego, and then he knows a wrestler. And then the wrestler, actually, he was here last night. He worked the independent show that they had. The independent show, my trainer, he just came up here as a fan, as another vendor, and then they needed some bodies for the 32-man Battle Royal, and got into Battle Royal, and they got into AWA show. It was just, it was crazy. They were just looking for people. Whoever had gear, they'd put in the Battle Royal.
What do you think about the ROH show so far?
The ROH show, the crowd is into it. A lot of these guys are yelling out references from like 5 years ago. I mean, it's like the California fans have been waiting for this for a while. I was talking to some guys earlier. If they'd had a one-night with Austin and the ROH show, I really think this would have been a lot bigger success. Yeah, this is what everyone came out for. The Ring of Honor booth was huge, and it did real well. And, I mean, yeah, the Sunday night definitely has been the best night. It has the most people, and then people are happy. And I don't think people came to the other two nights because they didn't quite know about all the craziness that happened the other two nights.
Since both of you were there, how was the Steve Austin deal? I heard he showed up and ended up going in after being talked to about it and went in there anyway, and I guess I would assume quite a crowd.
Oh, it was. I didn't get to go talk to Austin because the crowd was, the line was just really, really long. And for what the crowd was just, there was a huge crowd for Austin. I didn't see it, but yeah, that's all I'm saying about that.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you very much for the call, and have a good time at the ROH show. Say hi to Dave.
Oh, yeah.
Porteau right now.
I'm talking to Keith. Lipinski's up here in the front row as well.
Cool.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
So, Dave, your thoughts on UFC last night?
It was a decent show. It came. I think a lot of people weren't very excited about it, and then coming out, it was just kind of there. Brandon Vera, again, that was not the result that UFC would have wanted. I think in any of the key matches, really. I think that in that sense, I think they wanted Rich Franklin to win. I think that they deep down probably didn't expect him to win, and he looked pretty outclassed actually by Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva looked like a real killer. It looks like it's going to be very difficult to win the championship from him. But, you know, I mean, we've seen with UFC, anything can happen. Those things, you know, they also want to keep everything quiet. So they're kind of it's weird. They got their hands tied. I know he wants to say, I think he wants to say everything. I know Randy wants to say everything. But his management people, you know, I don't know what they're going to try to talk him out of it. He's got a press conference on Thursday, by the way, to address everything. And I know Randy wants to say exactly what he made, and they're trying to say, you know, if you say exactly what you made, you're going to lose a lot of sympathy because all of a sudden people are going to go, hey, wait, you know, you're not so underpaid. You know, I mean, there's people around who actually think he only made $250,000 for the last 2 fights, which, of course, you know, that's not what he made, you know.
I believe we have a full bank of phone calls, but you can try anyway. And we were discussing the UFC show from last night, and Dave, the debut of Brock Lesnar, apparently in February. Who would you match him up against?
If they could get Brad Hyman's back under contract, I think she's someone of that level. You know, a big guy with lower level of experience. That's kind of who I would match him up with, because you put him in there with a guy with a lot more experience, you're asking for trouble. I mean, Brock's a great athlete, and he's a tremendous prospect for this sport, but you know, this is not 1997 where an amateur wrestler can walk in and dominate everyone because everyone's singular discipline in wrestling can take down a kickboxer. This is, you know, these guys have learned how to avoid takedowns. They're, you know, the groundwork is far more sophisticated. I mean, he's had a year plus of training. I mean, you know, almost a year and a half now, but you know, he's still. You know, people who want to see him go in there and fight Nogueira right off the bat, I mean, that's pretty unrealistic. But you know, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting thing who they match him up against and how they, you know, it's like the curse of death, him being Brock Lesnar. I mean, the good side is that I'm sure he came in and he's getting a lot of money. I'm sure he's getting a great contract to come in, which another former NCAA champion, you know, there's many that have gone into this, you know, that are running around, you know, Mark Munoz, Jake Rocholds, Johnny Hendricks, people like that, awesome amateur wrestlers, as good as Brock. You know, they're not getting anything anywhere near that kind of money, but they're also being able to, you know, progress at a level where, you know, they can learn and go and get to the top slowly, whereas Brock, because of that money, you know, they're going to want some return on their investment. The first match, you know, they probably can get a lot of curiosity buys just by the fact he's having a first match. But, you know, down the road, they're going to want to match him with, you know, your Arlovskis and your Tim Sylvias and people like that. And, you know, you do that too soon and you may ruin him. So, yeah, it's a careful thing. But, you know, they know what they're doing. It's just a question of how much patience they're going to have with it.
What do you expect to happen tomorrow when they have the big press conference with Fedor?
I mean, they're just going to announce, you know, that they're running an organization. I think they're